Hello. Hello, Noelle, and hello, Eel. Thank you for the lurk and the kind message. Get the music back. Have a. Oh, hello, Faybot. Have a video game study lounge playing, but they don't know that I'm actually not going to study. I'm going to read Magical Girl Erasing Project. I fooled them. Let's see, we are starting book 4 tonight, which is, oh, Slurp and Stretch. I could give you a free one. Wait, my water bottles. Get over there. Okay. Yes, what is study? Study doesn't have to be a school thing. It could be anything. If you are concentrating your brain on something, that's studying it, right? But I am starting book 4, which is a collection of short stories. I think most of them are not violent like the rest of the series. I think there's maybe 1 or 2 that are, but I think tonight's going to be very wholesome. Lifelong learner here. So on the first page, we have a Nemarine with this little boy that we will meet in one of the stories. We have a T-Rex, it looks like, and a small Nemarine in the background. This is like the cover page, I guess. No, what do you call the page that's right when you open the cover? And we have an illustration of Magical Daisy with Palette. Magical Daisy episode 22, theme songs, Hello Daisy, and Puppy Poo Palette. I wish this was real. I wish she really did have an anime. But at least Magical Girl Raising Project has an anime. They are making an anime based on Restart, so that means they have to make the Magical Daisy anime real. That's what that means, right? We have a lot of illustrations just opening up the book. And we have one. This is a scene from Cherna Mouse's story, which I think is not going to be tonight, if I remember right. This is from A Cherna Christmas, which, let's see. Yes, that is the 6th story, so that will be next time. Then one more. Actually, there's a couple more after that, but one more of this style of... No, sorry. What? Did I not add this as an image? Hang on. Oh, I added it. Oh, it was out of order. Huh. I don't know if that was on me or the website I downloaded this from. 1 second. Ooh. There it is. I thought I read this. This is from Meow Meow at End City. I think I won't read these so that I save that for the story. That's the quotes from the story. Let's see, when do we read this one? Oh, I think this will also be next week. It'll be the 3rd story. Not next week, next time I stream reading. But now I have illustrations of all of the girls from the first 2 books. I'm in the tutorial of the book. That's Snow White, can hear the thoughts of those in need. Ruler, can order those directly in front of her to do anything. Hardcore Alice, can quickly heal any wound. Meadow can transform into any object. Unile can transform into any creature. Ripple can throw shuriken that always hit their target. Tama can quickly open holes in anything. La Pucelle can change the size of her sword at will. Vice Winter Prison can create walls anywhere. Oh, I just now realized they have their real name there too. Calamity Mary, well, except for this one, can power up the weapon she wields. I never realized they don't tell you her real name. They show you or tell you a little bit about her as outside of being a magical girl, but they don't tell you her name for some reason. Yes, I love Magical 844. They save the best for last. Well, actually, I'm biased. I think Cranberry is the best, but that's just me. Nemarine can enter others' dreams. Swim, can pass through any object like it's water. Sister Nana, Meow, can draw out the power of the one she loves to its fullest. Top Speed, uses a broomstick to fly at high speed. Musician of the Forest Cranberry, can freely manipulate sound. Magical 844, receives 1 useful futuristic tool a day. And then it says, the story. The super popular mobile game Magical Girl Raising Project can cause miracles. It turns out of every few tens of thousands of players, it turns 1 out of every few tens of thousands of players into a real magical girl. Having been bestowed with magical powers, these lucky girls live each day to the fullest. But then one day, management sends them to its unilateral decree. We have too many magical girls, so we're cutting the number in half. And thus begins a harsh and ruthless race for survival among 16 magical girls. So this covers the first book. And then there's one for the second arc. Restart. Hechka can create really delicious food. Noko can change the feelings of those around her. Flea uses a magical wheelchair to race at intense speeds. Detect Bell can talk to buildings. Lapis Lazuli can use gems to teleport. Clantail can transform the lower half of her body into different animals. Rionetta can manipulate dolls with her thoughts. At Meow Meow can trap things inside paper talismans. Shadowgale can power up machines by modifying them. Melville can change her color at will. Akane can cut anything she sees. Nonoko Miyokata can make friends with any animal. Magical Daisy can shoot lethal daisy beams. Genopsycho Yumenoshima can block any attack with her magical suit. Masked Wonder can change any object's weight. Cherna Mouse can make herself really big. And Keek can do whatever she wants within her personal cyberspace. And the story. Having been bestowed with the powers by the magical kingdom, these magical girls work hard every day at helping people. Then the girls receive invitations from an unknown sender to a game called Magical Girl Raising Project. Trapped in an unfair game where they could die at any time, each of the 16 girls comes up with a plan to survive as the figure behind the curtain toys with them. Okay, we are finally on to the actual story. I forgot to delete this. Wait, did I just delete something that I needed later? Hang on. Oh no. No, I think I'm fine. Oh, wait. I think I did. Let me just add this back. We'll come back to this picture. put it under my pronouns. Or I tried to. But where are my pronouns? Why aren't they on top? Oh well. Okay. Nemarine's Adventure. This story is set around the time when when the magical candy competition and magical girl raising project had just begun. No one could stop the giant monster's advance. No power could keep it in check. Not the police, not the Japan Self-Defense Forces, not the American military, not law, ethics, or passion. Of course, handguns and machines were useless, and even tank-mounted cannons and missiles did nothing more than sprinkle the monster's hide with soot. The beast was merciless, even when crushing girls who screamed and cried as they ran this way and that, trying to escape. This monster, the mound of violent impulse, could not stand the presence of the insolent buildings those tiny humans had fussed over making. It tore down the National Diet building with its black, knobbled forelegs, and with a swing of its tail, it snapped the Tokyo Skytree in half. From its mouth, filled with flashing fangs, it fired a heat ray that blasted the Tokyo Metropolitan Government building into bits in one shot. A boy was watching the monster from atop a high-rise building. His knees were trembling, and he couldn't even stand as he clung to the chain-link fence that circumscribed the building's roof to stop people from jumping off. The black creature and its unfettered campaign of destruction terrified him more than he could take. Unable to hide its joy in the mayhem, the monster howled loudly, rattling the glass of all the nearby buildings. But it was so worked up, a howl wasn't enough to sate its energies. Its red eyes, filled with violent passion, scanned the area until they met those of the trembling boy on the roof. The monster was over 160 feet tall. Who knows why such a large creature would lock gazes with a boy not even 5 feet tall? But it did. The monster's mouth twisted to bare its fangs. Had it just smiled? The fiend approached the boy, leaving footprints in the road as its feet slammed down. The boy thought about running, but his legs wouldn't move. Sensing his inevitable death, he screamed, "Help! Give it to me!" A girl's voice responded just as its owner revealed herself. She stood on the chain-link fence in front of the boy, shielding him from the giant. She was wearing pajamas and holding a pillow under her right arm. Her hair, which was longer than she was tall, swayed in the winds blowing high above the ground. "You're a vile monster, destroying the city and hurting people. Magical girl Nemarine is gonna beat you up!" The girl leaped from the chain-link fence and bent over into an acute angle in midair to land a kick between the monster's eyes. The creature wailed, though it hadn't even twitched in response to the missiles or tank-mounted cannons. The girl kicked it, punched it, and whacked it with her pillow, and each time the monster voiced its pain with truly pathetic-sounding cries. Then it tried to run away, but the girl was hot on its heels, grabbing its tail to swing it around violently and throw it. Crash! The ground pitched. The road caved in, and buildings lurched off-center. The monster wasn't only hurt by the impact of its landing, its eyes were spinning after being swung around and around. Now that her foe was stunned, the girl touched both her index fingers to her forehead, striking a pose. "Nemarine beam! Zap, 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 zap!" Beams shaped like jagged, angular lightning shot out of her forehead to envelop the great monster in golden light. Its black hide turned a pale green color, its horns and fangs shortened, and it shrank down a size. "The evil heart controlling you has now been purified. Go on, return to the southern islands." The monster stood up and bobbed its head in a bow to the girl, then strode away with steps that seemed somehow rejuvenated.
How could you do that to me just because I look scary?
I didn't do it, it was Nemarine. The girl spent some time watching the monster go, and then she hopped up in the air and disappeared. The boy stared at the scene, dumbfounded, but before long, he awakened to the sound of his mother yelling, "How long are you going to sleep? You're going to be late again!" This play lay on the boundary between dreams and reality. Fluffy white clouds went on forever and ever. They looked just like cotton candy, and in fact, if someone put some in their mouth, they'd find it tasted a little sweet. There was a canopy, too, made of the same stuff as the clouds, spread out in 4 directions, and underneath it sat a sofa and some cushions. The magical girl Nemerine's long hair dangled to the cloud floor as she sat daintily on the sofa, using her magical phone. A hologram of the mascot character Fav floated up from its screen. On the magical phone screen was the number 7,530,685,689,921. That was the amount of magical candy Nemerine had.
Defeating that monster today made my...
Oh, sorry, that's not Fav.
Defeating that monster today made my candy count even more ridiculous, huh? That's what happens when you keep saving Earth and the universe and stuff, Plum. Is this number cat? You mean, is there a maximum possible value? There might be a limit in the settings, but no magical girl has ever actually stored up that much, Poon. Huh. Then maybe Nemerine will work harder to store up more and become the first magical girl ever to hit the candy limit. You might as well do that in reality, Poon. Doing it in reality is so exhausting.
Magical candy in dreams was limited to the world of dreams only. Nemerine may have been getting rich in this realm, but in the real world, her candy values were still at 0. She would probably be the first one to be cut under the new rule that had been announced the other day, that whoever had the lowest number of candy would stop being a magical girl. Pav had been stubbornly insisting,
"You should earn candy in the real world, Plum."
But Nemerine never listened. Still holding her magical phone, she flopped over to lie on the sofa. Nemerine's power as a magical girl was to traverse between the world of dreams and real life. In dreams, everything was a piece of cake for her, even beating up an evil god or a great monster. But in the physical world, she was bound by the laws of reality.
Maybe Nemerine can just let the other girls handle the real world,
she muttered.
You've got no initiative, Poon. Nemerine will work hard in the dream world.
All of a sudden, the Nemerine antennae that decorated the ends of her hair cried out, "A magical girl is dreaming!" And Nemerine leaped to her feet. It seemed someone she knew was having a dream.
You're going to go watch, Poon? Of course.
Nemerine snapped her fingers, and a door rose up from the clouds. The large, thick slab of wood looked old, but there were no nicks or dirt on it. She reached out to the doorknob and turned it. The door was unlocked. Nemu Sanjo had been a hardcore indoor type ever since she was practically a baby. She'd have severe asthma that prevented her from playing outside freely, but she had enjoyed listening to her older brother and sister tell her funny stories about what happened to them. "We had fun doing this today," or "so-and-so told me that." Nemu was a good listener, or rather, she sincerely enjoyed hearing her siblings talk, and the pleasure she derived from it made them happy too. So they told her everything, failures, secrets, and all. Nemu had recovered from her infantile asthma almost entirely by the time she started elementary school, but her nature was basically set in stone by that point. She preferred watching other people do things rather than doing them herself. She didn't like hard work or conflict. It wasn't like she was passive or a poor communicator. She had friends, she just didn't want to be active. She had more fun listening to people talk about things so she could imagine them, rather than experiencing those things for herself. Even after Nemu graduated from university, she devoted herself to reading and playing video games, with the excuse that she was helping around the house. But neither her parents nor her siblings scolded her for it. The Sanju family had been big property magnates for centuries. Magnates for centuries. And they owned 7 apartment buildings in total, large and small. So her family was financially comfortable. Plus, they loved the easygoing Nemu, so they spoiled her. Nemu first started playing the mobile game Magical Girl Racing Project when she heard the rumors of its miraculous power to make one out of every few tens of thousands of players into a real magical girl. And then, even after it turned her into the magical girl Nemarine, nothing changed about her lifestyle. She didn't like trouble. She didn't like conflict. If there was going to be a competition between all the girls for candy, then she wouldn't bother gathering any at all. She accomplished all sorts of things in the dream world, while in the real world, she enjoyed the once weekly special chat unique to the magical girls. She listened to the stories of the others who'd gained powers through the game, like Snow White, La Pucelle, and Sister Nana. And she also checked what they were up to via the magical girl aggregate sites and visits to their dreams. The world of dreams belonged to Nemarine. When she was at the boundary between dreams and reality, she knew exactly when any acquaintance was dreaming, as long as it was someone she met in real life. If one of her colleagues was dreaming, she would immediately rush over to watch, and occasionally she would participate. It was unusual for a magical girl to dream as her superpowered alter ego, so she always jumped at the opportunity. Snow White had once debuted as a singing and dancing magical girl idol. Sister Nana had once been locked in a castle tower and was saved by a prince. Topspeed had won a witch's broom race at one point. Nemarine had seen Winter Prison flirting with Sister Nana in a room in their apartment. Even Nemarine hadn't been able to bring herself to watch that. She'd left before it ended. La Pucelle had fought a dragon once. The dragon had her on the ropes when Nemarine had swooped down right in the nick of time, throwing a rock at the dragon in an attempt to save her cornered friend. But her arm had been cut off, and she'd hit the back of La Pucelle's head instead. Nemarine had panicked and run away, and in the chat the next day, La Pucelle had complained about a big mysterious lump on her head when she'd woken up that morning. Nemarine had apologized secretly and silently. Fav made fun of her, calling her a peeping Tom and a voyeur and a stalker. It wasn't like Nemarine was completely shameless about it, but she figured any of the magical girls she knew would probably forgive her if she apologized, so she decided to do so mentally and go see the stream too. Nemarine opened the big, creaking floor and followed the fluffy road out of the pure cloud boundary realm between dreams and reality and emerged in the world of dreams, which had anything and everything. The soft billows gave way to hard stone floor, people started to appear, and before she knew it, the area was filled with tightly packed crowds. It was so stuffy it made her want to gag. It was a Middle Ages Europe-style town abuzz, with some event like a festival. Absolutely everyone was excited, and this whirlpool of wild enthusiasm was centered around something specific. Nemarine leaped up to escape the sweltering air of the crowd and went to sit on the roof of a building with a hanging signboard that seemed to indicate the place was an inn. There was a line of knights and soldiers, court ladies and jesters, and a band playing a rowdy and boisterous song, and riding the palanquin at its head was a princess. Nemarine looked hard at the princess. She seemed familiar, but still, it wasn't someone she'd met in real life. She could swear she had seen this princess in the magical girl chat as an avatar.
That's
Sorry.
That's Ruler, isn't it?
She had only come to the chat once or twice, but Nemarine remembered her. It was definitely Ruler. The crowd was calling her name too. Great Ruler, Great Ruler. Nemarine flicked on her magical phone and summoned Fav.
Yes? Hey, Fav, that princess is Ruler, right? Yes, it is, Plum. Doesn't dream magic only let me see the dreams of people I've met in real life? Nemarine doesn't remember ever having met Ruler face to face. Maybe you've encountered her someplace before, as a human? Oh, I guess that's possible. Wait.
Upon closer inspection, Nemarine could see that the outlines of Ruler on the palanquin were faintly blurred.
Ruler isn't the dreamer. That Ruler is part of the dream.
Because Nemarine operated in the world of dreams, she could somehow tell the difference between the person who was dreaming and the characters who populated the dream. Second. This wasn't Ruler's. Someone else was dreaming about her. Nemarine bumped up the sensitivity of her Nemarine antenna and scanned the area. Antennae. Her eyes came to rest on a certain little girl. She was alone, separate from the crowd, and as she watched Ruler, she had an air about her that differentiated her from the bubbling enthusiasm surrounding her. She must have been about 6 years old, and she was quite adorable. She was the dreamer. Though the girl appeared human, the Nemarine antennae indicated that the dreamer was a magical girl, which had to mean she was dreaming in her regular human form. Nemarine jumped off the roof of the inn and floated down, doing a spin to land beside the girl. The girl completely ignored Nemarine's sudden descent. She had eyes only for Ruler. Nemarine observed the little girl's face. Thinking about it now, she had the feeling she may or may not have seen a kid like this in her neighborhood. Maybe she had said hi to Nemu on her way to or from school, or maybe not. The little girl was gazing at Ruler with sparkling eyes filled with admiration.
Do you love Ruler?
Nemarine asked. The little girl nodded, eyes on Ruler the whole time.
'Cause she's cute? 'Cause she's cute, and she's cool, and she's a princess. I gotcha. Princesses are really neat, huh? Yeah. When I grow up, I'm gonna be her attendant. Attendant? That's a big word. Yeah. But what if, instead of becoming her attendant, you became a princess yourself? Huh?
For the first time, the girl tore her eyes away from Ruler. They were wide in surprise, staring at Nemarine. Nemarine knelt down so she could be at eye level with the little girl.
I'm sure you can become one. All little girls can become princesses. Me, becoming a princess.
The girl muttered dazedly. Nemarine patted her head as if to say goodbye and leaped up. The fears and aspirations of small children were so incredibly easy to understand in their dreams. They didn't try to hide behind shyness or vanity the way adults did. Nemarine's absolute favorite thing was to watch dreams like that from afar, but on that day she breathed a large sigh. Even as she flew toward the boundary between dreams and reality, she couldn't stop thinking about the girl she'd just seen.
What's wrong, Pom?
Bob's tone didn't indicate any concern. He was purely curious, and that simple desire to know was patently evident. Nemarine sighed again.
Oh, thinking back on how that girl's eyes sparkled, you know? It's like suddenly I feel kinda dirty. I can't help feeling this way whenever I see little kids. Well, you are dirty, actually. You're the only magical girl with a peeping habit, Pom. You're not gonna even try to console me? Nope, Moon. Harsh.
Nemarine's reason for non-participation was that she didn't want to engage in conflicts. She had basically boycotted candy gathering, implicitly stating her refusal to involve herself in a game to compete for the highest candy score. But now, she kind of felt like her reasons had changed. That girl had shown straightforward adoration, pure feelings, even when she wasn't transformed. She was so overwhelmingly a magical girl. She must have been another magical girl in town. And if she was, she too would be forced to gather magical candy. But Nemarine wanted to delay forcing on her the stains and wounds of the candy competition even just a little bit longer. If Nemarine were to do nothing and go back to being a human, then that girl could remain pure that much longer. Maybe.
At this rate, at the weekend chat, you're gonna be the dropout, Poon. Yeah, I guess my fun as a magical girl is over. What'll you do if you retire, Poon?
Nemarine tilted her neck left, then right, and then sucked in a big lungful of air. The air of the dream world was thick, sweet, and somehow suffocating. She looked at her feet as she flew and saw that her right sock was slipping down. Tucking it up, she murmured,
Maybe I'll stop being stuck in my house doing nothing and start looking for a job.
The great sea of clouds, white as far as the eye could see, spread out before her.
I bet I'll have good dreams today,
Nemarine thought. The Robot and the Nun. This story is set when there weren't yet many magical girls in End City, a while before the Magical Girl Raising Project game first started. When Makoto Ando, a robot nun, oh no, it's a robot and a nun, silly. When Makoto Ando didn't want to do something, she would never ever do it. Phlegmatic in all things as she was, she failed her high school entrance exams, dropped out of school, and got a job. Her parents said it was meant to be. Makoto herself believed that. When she didn't want to do something, she just didn't, and there was no helping that. So once she graduated middle school and began lazing around, her parents tried to grab a hold of her and force her into doing things she didn't want to do. Or she didn't want to. Then she went around staying at friends' places instead, only coming back home once every 2 weeks. She would sneak expired box lunches out from the convenience store where she worked. She would quench her thirst at park fountains. When she found edible plants, she would pack them into a plastic bag to take home. She would take along with her homeless friends to line up at soup kitchens. When she was at a station transferring trains, 29 times out of 30, she'd resist the smell of the soba stalls. This sort of life better suited her nature than buckling down to study like her parents told her to. Even Makoto herself couldn't tell if this meant she had a tenacious personality or not. Once a friend of hers told her, "You're pretty cute, Makoto. There's a way to earn more money, you know." The friend even added that she'd introduced her to someone nice. But after that day, Makoto erased that girl's contact from her phone, and they never hung out again. Makoto had liked her friend's voice, which still sounded a little immature despite its more prominent edge of cruelty and cunning. But Makoto had cut her off because she'd suspected that if she stuck with that girl, she would have been forced into something she didn't want to do. Makoto was sensitive to these things. In fact, she was indifferent about everything else. She would lie about her age, 15, in order to get jobs. She would suck up to nasty people, and when she gambled over mahjong, she would use cheap tricks to rip off the poor. She wasn't proud. She just never did anything she didn't want to. If the task Makoto had accepted from a friend had been something unacceptable to her, she wouldn't have done it either. This task wasn't interesting, just work and nothing more, but since she didn't really mind, she accepted the task on the condition that she would be allowed to stay the night.
All right, thanks then,
her friend said and went off to school. After that, Makoto was left alone with her friend's smartphone. In the messy apartment filled with sloppy stacks of magazines, Makoto lay down on the sofa with the phone. Her friend had already explained to her how to use it. Since her task was clear, it wasn't a bother. The colorful logo of Magical Girl Raising Project rose on the screen. Makoto input the ID and password her friend had given her, and an avatar appeared on screen. Though this was supposed to be a Magical Girl game, the avatar was designed to look like a robot. Not one part of it looked like one of the classic heroines. Not the boosters on its back, the wings at its waist, nor its red eyes. It really did stand out among NPCs and other avatars. Why had her friend designed an avatar like this? Glancing about the room, Makoto saw that among the mess of magazines were a number of robot-themed monthly manga anthologies. There was even a plastic model kit underneath a convenience store lunch she had eaten the day before. Makoto hadn't heard that this friend was into robots, but thinking about it now, she was the type to be easily affected by the guys she dated. Aha, Makoto thought, nodding as she began her task. Makoto was to fight a certain number of battles within the game's Coliseum. This would fulfill the conditions for acquiring a special card. However, the total amount was incredibly high, and it seemed no small number of people had just given up when they found out how extreme it was. Makoto's friend had not given up. She had persisted, dumping the task of Coliseum battles on Makoto instead. Now that Makoto thought about it, when she was a kid, she'd known plenty of people who made their younger siblings level grind for them in RPGs. I guess this sort of thing doesn't really change even when you get older, she thought vaguely. Her task was simple. Magical Girl Raising Project sold itself on the fact that it was completely free to play, but even then, in Makoto's opinion, it was a total waste of time. If you wanted entertainment, there were ways to get your kicks that were actually profitable. It was better to earn yourself some pocket money than to kill time for no pay. As Makoto went on pressing buttons and musing, I can't understand people who do this, and I had chosen an avatar that's more like a magical girl. And I'd have chosen an avatar that's more like a magical girl. Suddenly there was a flourish of trumpets. Figuring she must have finished the right number of battles, Makoto looked down at the screen to see a sphere floating there.
Congratulations! You've been chosen to be a magical girl, Poon!
What just happened? Makoto had been mashing buttons and was hardly watching the screen, so maybe she pressed the wrong thing. If so, that was bad. It would be fine if she could just redo it, but it would really suck if she'd done something she couldn't take back. Even if her friend wouldn't ask for money to repay her, it would still be a serious blow for her to lose someone who would do nail art on her for free. The plumes? What's the plumes? Sorry. Oh, you mean, Poon?
What's wrong, Poon? You're not glad to have this opportunity, Poon?
Shut up for a minute. This isn't the time to be asking that.
Shut up! That's mean, Poon.
Enough with the Poon thing. Is tagging the end of your sentences like that's supposed to be cute? It's obnoxious. At this point, Makoto realized she was having a conversation with the sphere inside the screen. The black and white orb floated and bobbed, scattering golden scales around it. Its eyes were simple, like a child's doodle, but she could clearly see the light of consciousness within them. Oh yeah, there was that rumor about this Magical Girl Raising Project game. This is in italics, so I think it's supposed to be her thoughts, so. Oh yeah, there was that rumor about this Magical Girl Raising Project game. People said it had the miraculous power to turn one in every few tens of thousands of people into a real magical girl. And that was how Makoto, even though this was not her game or her own avatar, became the heroine Magicaloid 44. I've met the prince of my dreams! Magical Girl's sister Nana made her announcement. Her eyes glazed over. She somehow reminded Magicaloid 44 of that one religious type who used to come around proselytizing now and then. This impression was irrelevant. Her voice bright and clear, Sister Nana gushed about how wonderful this Prince Charming of hers was. cool and beautiful and academic and athletic, how everyone adored her, and how she cared for Sister Nana most of all. Though this bored Magicaloid 44, she listened. The one who had taken on the mentor role for Magicaloid 44 when she'd become a magical girl was Calamity Mary, an outlaw who aggressively defied both good sense and common sense. So that was part of why, in Magicaloid 44's head, there was a diagram that read, Magical Girls equals absurd.
I have come to see that your prince is amazing,
said Magicaloid 44.
You do? Wonderful! So you said you had business with me? What is it?
Magicaloid 44 had met Sister Nana in the Magical Girl chat, and it was there that Sister Nana had requested an in-person meeting. Though Magicaloid 44 had expected her to be a weirdo, she had agreed anyway. Why? Because it seemed interesting. When she actually met Sister Nana at the designated location on the roof of a building in Mizoshiro, she found the other girl was indeed a weirdo. Her kind expression, sparkling eyes, and costume based on a nun's habit made her resemble an actual nun, but all her blabbering about her ideal prince wasn't exactly suited for a convent. She was a weirdo, but her eccentricity took her in a different direction than that of the wild and self-important Calamity Mary. Sister Nana gave her a beaming smile. The moon and clouds made for a fitting backdrop, but the iron railing and water tank on the building's roof clashed so badly with the picture, it gave the whole thing a surreal edge. I have been told you're a magical girl type robot from the 22nd century.
Oh yes, that was my character background.
And you have a wealth of convenient tools and such.
Though I have more tools that are not so convenient.
Might it be possible for me to borrow one of them? Sister Nana continued. She wanted to tell Magicaloid 44 that her ideal prince was quite literally everything she desired, except for the fact that, blemish the word, she wasn't a magical girl. What makes a prince an ideal one is the ability to protect a loved one when the time comes. And since she wasn't a magical girl, then Sister Nana would obviously be the stronger one, physically, and the nun would be forced to protect her prince instead. And then this prince could not be perfect, even though standing on the same stage as Sister Nana would make her perfect. Frankly, Magicaloid 44 didn't really get what she was talking about. And that's why I would like to assist her in becoming a magical girl. Could I perhaps borrow one of your tools for that purpose? Sister Nana pulled out a standard manila envelope. The winds at this altitude made it flutter. I'm aware this is presumptuous, so I've brought a little something to show my gratitude, though it isn't much. Magicaloid 44 still didn't follow, but what she did understand was that whether she followed or not didn't really matter. She accepted the envelope and checked its contents to find one 10,000 yen bill. Thinking about it now, she seemed to recall complaining in chat once.
Being a magical girl is work, but it doesn't make you any money.
Perhaps Sister Nana had remembered that. Might you lend me a hand? Sister Nana was smiling at her brightly like an angel. Magicaloid 44 cleared her throat, stuck her hand into the weapon rack at her waist area, rummaged around inside, and pulled out a device. It was the size of an alarm clock, stacked with meters or something all over. Magicaloid 44 could tell what the object she'd produced actually was. It was an insect sex differentiation device. As the name said, it could help you tell if an insect was male or female. Could this item make a human into a magical girl? The answer was no, but she wanted money, so she couldn't change the item. What should she do? What's this? Asked Sister Nana.
Ta-da-da-da! It's an insect sex differentiation device. As the name says, it's a useful tool with which you can determine if an insect is male or female.
What purpose could it have?
insects are mysterious creatures. One theory even says the creatures we call insects are visitors from space, or even another world. Through contact with these fantastic organisms, you can increase your potential as a magical girl. Although, I perhaps cannot know this for sure. Magicaloid 44 said the last part very quietly and very quickly. But Sister Nana accepted the item with great joy anyway. Really? That's great! It seems she'd accepted the mercenary, mercenary, Makoto's fabricated explanation. Alternate universe spacebook. Being a magical girl was not profitable. The rule that you couldn't reveal your true identity and the system of helping people for magical candy were not suited to making money. Calamity Mary had boasted of how she'd earn rewards by helping out organized crime. Meow. But if Magicaloid 44 were to do the same, she would clearly be impinging on Calamity Mary's territory, and Magicaloid 44 didn't have the guts to do something like that. If she were to assist non-criminal organizations, she could easily anticipate situations that would contravene the rules of magical girls, and more to the point, Magicaloid 44 didn't look human compared with other magical girls. When the others helped people, the recipients came away thinking, "What a beautiful girl." But when Magicaloid 44 did the same, she just scared people. "Ah, a monster!" In her brief time as a magical girl, she had seen such reactions from a number of people. Even if she wasn't crying into her pillow at night, it did hurt in an ordinary way. And it wasn't like it didn't discourage her. On the aggregate sites, Magicaloid 44 occupied a separate category by herself, introduced as a robot being controlled by magic. She botched her introductions just about every day. So one might think she should go straight into using her powers for crime, but if she did that, the other magical girls would come after her later, since they would earn magical candy for taking care of criminals who cause trouble for others. Worst case scenario, someone like Calamity Mary would show up. Taking that into consideration, it was clear that the path of evil was a bad idea. She had initially believed acquiring these supernatural powers was an unexpected stroke of luck, but instead the powers were surprisingly useless. So Sister Nana, who had come to her in her hour of disappointment, was a lifesaver in a way. Magicaloid 44's magic enabled her to pick out one handy gadget from the future out of the 444,444,444 in her possession once per day. But there were two catches. One, she couldn't choose what would come out of the weapon rack herself. It was completely random. And two, the item was disposable and would only last that one day. The bug sexer Magicaloid 44 had handed to Sister Nana was a throwaway too, and it would stop working after a day. So the next day, Sister Nana came to visit her again. "While I was using it, for some reason, it broke." Magicaloid 44 manufactured a look of happy surprise. She wasn't too bad at this sort of acting. "Oh, that is amazing. My items emit magical power, which gradually depletes. In other words, the rapid depletion means you are absorbing its magical effects incredibly quickly. Congratulations." Sister Nana, in her total ignorance, was overjoyed. Happy and excited, she bought a new item, the debris removal manipulator, for 10,000 yen and went home. After Sister Nana left, Magicaloid 44 leaned against the iron railing and gazed up at the full moon hanging in the sky. Just barely peeking through the gaps between the clouds, it reminded her of a 500 yen coin. This is a truly profitable business.
For a week after that, Sister Nana came to visit Magicaloid 44 every day. Each time, Magicaloid 44 said things like,
It's just about time. Or, I can see the signs. Or, it won't be long before she becomes a magical girl.
To get Sister Nana excited and happy, Magicaloid 44 sold her a fully automated cleaning machine, a pen that could draw a manga in a day, an anti-magical creature ray gun, and more, fattening her purse by 10,000 yen daily. And each day she smirked as she watched her wallet get heavier bit by bit. At this rate, she might even be able to buy the house she dreamed of. But the honeymoon period didn't last long. 1 week after their first meeting, Sister Nana's dream prince ended up becoming a magical girl. Sister Nana said that when she equipped the 7th futuristic item, the magical power amplifying earring, her prince had received her powers fairly quickly.
Ah, so that was what the magical power amplifier was? Damn it. So then I should not have given it to her.
She was grinding her teeth in regret, but on the outside she celebrated the event and congratulated Sister Nana. Sister Nana was thrilled. She grasped Magicaloid 44's hand and swung it around, and then spun her in circles. As the nun twirled in circles on the building's roof, Magicaloid 44 felt disappointed. Being a magical girl really didn't pay. Then Sister Nana gave her an invitation.
I'd like to have a party, as both a celebration for her becoming a magical girl and a thank you for your help. I'll put together a little something in the way of treats and drinks, so I would very much love it if you could come.
Magicaloid 44 accepted without hesitation. 80% of the decision was based on the enticing phrase, a little something in the way of treats and drinks. The other 20% was curiosity about this ideal prince. Sister Nana's Prince Charming, the magical girl of Vice Winter Prison, was indeed quite princely. Between her somber gaze, her cool manner, her fitting name, and her appearance, she was beautifully androgynous. Her nobility was enough to make them completely forget the plainness of her costume, which consisted of a long coat and scarf, along with how cheap their setup was, a simple folding table with snacks, and juice in an empty supermarket. The venue for their party was an out-of-business grocery store, which of course looked old, though it wasn't dusty. Apparently, even now, someone was taking care of it. Sister Nana may have been the one cleaning it. Magicaloid 44 could see her diligence in the chocolate treats, pudding, and cookies. Even with Winter Prison right there, Sister Nana still gushed about her, going on and on shamelessly.
She's so gorgeous, just like her normal form.
I'll share the picture now. And
she's such a nice person.
As Winter Prison snacked on the chocolate without reproving her. There were 2 invites in total, and the other magical girl besides Magicaloid 44 only watched in apparent boredom at the lovebirds' mushy flirting. Mentally decrying the pair as an unabashed and annoyingly sappy couple, Magicaloid 44 figured she would at least be compensated for her trouble with some food to take home. Responding with vague, uh-huh, and yes, she dropped snack after snack into her weapon rack. When the lovebirds excused themselves, she let out a deep sigh from the bottom of her heart and addressed the other magical girl, who was eating and drinking in silence.
It has been a rough time for you, too.
Being an awkward third wheel? The knight with a tail, La Pucelle, seemed to consider this for a while. But then she said, Sister Nana is my teacher, as her squire cooperating with her is a matter of course. That this girl called herself Sister Nana's squire must have meant Sister Nana had been in charge of teaching her how to be a magical girl. Squire was such a knightly and old-timey term. Magicaloid 44 was also the type who liked to get into character, which she did by speaking in a more robotic tone and cutting contractions and such. So she resonated just a bit with its knight's choice to use an old-fashioned term. So she continued the thread of conversation.
What did this cooperation entail?
dressing up in a disguise and pretending to be a bad guy to attack her, stuff like that.
Oh, so scenarios where Winter Prison can protect Sister Nana?
Well, yeah. The knight was clearly a bit embarrassed about it. It seemed she did indeed resonate with Magical Art 44. Plus, the knight continued, I think love is a wonderful thing. All at once, Magical Art 44's possible sympathy gauge dropped to 0. Anyone who would look at a stupid, gushy couple and then recite the empty cliche that love is a wonderful thing was not someone Magical Art 44 wanted to be friends with, frankly.
Are you in love too, Lady Knight?
The blush in La Pucelle's cheeks deepened noticeably. She crushed the juice-filled paper cup in her hand, sending a spray of orange liquid in all directions. Her tail smacked the ground with a thump thump. Oh, not really, I wouldn't go so far as to call it that. She's a childhood friend. It's just, I'm a little interested in her, that's all. It's not, it's not love or anything like that.
What is she like?
She loves magical girls, and she's so nice, and she can never look away when someone is in trouble. Anyway, it's really not serious enough to be calling it love.
I see. That is wonderful.
Maybe now that Magical Aid 44 was done with Sister Nana, La Pucelle or that childhood friend of hers should be her next mark. The party had basically just forced them to watch a stupid couple even more sickly sweet than the treats. But now it was over. Magical Aid 44 was about to leave when Sister Nana called out to her to stop her. Would you perhaps know of any dangerous places, Miss Magicaloid?
What? Dangerous places?
Yes.
Oh, I do.
But it is a person.
It is a person rather than a place. Calamity Mary is dangerous. To put it in terms of a location, that would be the Jonan district, her territory.
Miss Calamity Mary, is that right? Thank you so very much for telling me. Sister Nana bobbed her head in a bow, then headed back into the supermarket. Magical Light 44 pressed the ignition on the backpack-shaped jetpack she wore and zoomed off through the sky. The moon had waned during the past week, unsurprisingly. She couldn't figure out what Sister Nana's intentions were in asking that question, and Magical Light 44 had almost asked her what this was about before dropping it. When Sister Nana had raised her head from the bow, she had been watching her with a certain black and vicious something within her eyes. That was not good. She didn't want to get mixed up with that. When Makoto didn't want to do something, she would absolutely not do it. Even now that she was a magical girl, that hadn't changed. She went back to her crash pad, detransformed, and went to visit her homeless friends, bringing the snacks along as presents. After being forced to endure that awkwardness, she wanted to relax, even just a bit.
You know, Pops, chatting with you like this is always the most relaxing thing.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that, Mako. So then, will you marry me?
Nope.
Get some more water. Throat seems a bit dry. I love Magical A44's design. Sister Nana was smiling gently, hands placed together on her lap. That smile looked very much like Nanu Habute's. But it had a different sort of appeal, too. This smile inspired in Winter Prison a desire to protect her. Now that Winter Prison was a magical girl, she would protect that smile. Nana was a little sad that her prince had gotten her powers from her, but the source of her strength wasn't an issue right now. Do you know of a magical girl named Calamity Mary in the Jonan district? No. You know that I'm a newbie. I'm ignorant about the others in this area. I've heard some unpleasant rumors. I believe we should go there and ask about the situation. Sister Nana was smiling, but she must have been seriously considering the peace of the town. She always prioritized others over herself. Shirley was a holy woman. Her darling, Winter Prison, wanted to embrace her. It was because of who she was that Winter Prison had to protect her. Nana had given her the power that now overflowed within her, so she should use it for Nana's sake. Producing the Angels. This story is set shortly before the competition for magical candy begins in Magical Girl Raising Project. I'm just curious what page I'm reading to. I am reading the first 5 stories. I don't think I... Okay. I don't think I remembered to say that. There was a mobile game called Magical Girl Raising Project. Rumors said this game caused miracles and made one out of every few tens of thousands of players into a real magical girl. The completely free-to-play element, which some called the height of madness for a mobile game, had definitely enabled the spread of such rumors. But it was a well-known fact that the gossip was based on actual sightings. The aggregate site dedicated to the strange girls, nicknamed Magical Girls, who were spotted in End City, was buzzing with activity that day, as it always was. The furious exchange of information that could be fact or fiction continued as posters endlessly added to the pile of impressions and commentary, as did the exchange of nastiness and scorn regarding said information. The regulars on this aggregate site were categorized into a number of types. Those who had been helped by magical girls, those who loved magical girls, those who were into magical girls, as well as cryptids and UFOs, those who lived to troll, and the magical girls themselves.
So what are we gonna do about this? I know, right?
Mina and Yuna Amasato were sitting side by side at their kitchen table, pressing their faces close in front of a smartphone as they discussed the magical girls. Most twins diverge in interests, principles, and even appearance as the years pass, but Mina and Yuna were still close. Despite being in university, they liked the same things, wore the same clothes, and looked like 2 peas in a pod. Even their parents couldn't tell them apart. They had always taken it for granted that they would choose the same university, live in the same apartment building, and do everything together. If they ever had any issues, they always talked them over with each other. The 2 of them saw this chat as a serious discussion, but it was really just an endless complaint and condolence circle jerk. At the very least, it wasn't a productive conversation about what to do. The both of them had gotten the vague sense that this conversation wasn't doing much for them, but it wasn't like they could come up with a solution for their problem anyway. And if they had no ideas, it was best to just let the conversation drag on. Talking might lead them to some kind of idea. Plus, Mina liked Yuna and Yuna liked Mina, so they didn't mind just chatting endlessly together.
While we're busy worrying over this, the popularity poll is gonna start. I know! At this rate, we won't be able to win first place! I really wish we had some kind of awesome plan to beat everyone. Agreed. But if it's just you and me, we're not gonna be able to come up with any ideas, are we? Oh, you're so magical, sis, picking up on that. If I were, maybe I'd come up with something. You're so magimodest, sis. Should we ask Ruler for advice? That hysterical old bag? No way. Meow. Yeah, but Fav is useless. Then Sister Nana or something? Or Calamity Mary? I'd take Ruler over either of them. We want to stay away from those types. Maybe asking for advice is the wrong way to think about it anyway. Well, yeah, maybe it's better to think of it like we're using them. Or working them like dogs. I like that. So then why not her, the new one? Oh, the puppy dog Ruler brought in? Yeah. Oh, I like that. So let's make her give us some ideas. Let's do it. Now that that's decided, let's play Momotetsu to celebrate our idea. Whoever loses buys dinner for us tonight. All right, I'm I'm gonna put an egg on my beef bowl today then.
Even magical girls, as unworldly as they seem, deal with interpersonal relationships like everyone else. When someone gains powers through Magical Girl Raising Project, the first thing that happens is a period of instruction from a more experienced magical girl. When Tama Inubozaki became her alter ego Tama and met another magical girl for the first time, the impression she got was, she seems scary. Though for Tama, about 85% of first-time encounters were scary. And after seeing them for a second or third time, 99% of those scary-seeming people turned out to be scary people in general. Tama's natural-born cowardice manifested itself as a timid personality, and that, coupled with her slow thinking, led people to rank her a rung lower than everyone else. Whether in after-school classes or at school, her teachers would either never bother with her in the first place, or eventually give up on her. When it came to schoolwork, she was the worst of the worst, and athletically, she ranked in the middling region of the bottom tier. She was also worse than average at drawing and singing. She was absolutely terrible at memorization. Her parents neglected her, and her younger brother and sister followed suit, treating Tama like she wasn't there. Her classmates in middle school thought of her only as a gopher or an extra head when they needed to round out a group. The only person who had ever listened to her, her maternal grandmother, had passed away 6 months earlier from acute pneumonia. Her grandma had listened intently to Tama's awkward stammering, often patting her head and telling her, "You're such a nice girl, Tama." During the funeral, Tama had recalled just how warm her hand had been. Devastated, she had cried and cried until she had no more tears to shed. It was the death of her grandmother that had led her to start playing Magical Girl Raising Project. With her grandmother gone, she no longer had anyone who would spend time with her. With some vague thoughts in her head that maybe she could escape from this hopeless mess by becoming a magical girl like the rumors said, Tama immersed herself in the game, practically clinging to her cell phone. And in about 2 months, the mascot character of Magical Girl Racing Project 5 came to talk to her.
Congratulations, Plum. You've been chosen to become a real magical girl, Plum.
And this was how Tama Inubozaki became the magical girl Tama. She now had the ability to run up walls, crush rocks, and circle the town with a string of continuous backflips. Her sharp senses meant she could dig through the darkness of night and hear a pin drop. She could see through the darkness of night and hear a pin drop. She had an adorable face and voice, and dog-like ears that would twitch back and forth, growing from her head. With her magical ability to instantly create holes, she could dig anywhere she wanted. Once Tama had checked out all of her new magical girl powers, she was brought to an abandoned temple called Okatsuji in Nishimonzen, where a more experienced magical girl would teach her the rules and give her an understanding of her role. In contrast with fluffy, puffy Tama and her doggy ears, doggy tail, hooded cape, and paw gloves, the magical girl ruler was sleek and slender in every way. She wore a long cape, sparkling tiara, and glass slippers, and she carried an ivory scepter. As she looked at Tama, swelling with pride, Ruler overflowed with the confidence and dignity of a magical girl befitting her princess-like attire. Tama automatically shrank into herself.
Now then, let's begin with what it means to be a magical girl.
Ruler launched into a lecture about how a heroine should not do this and should conduct herself like that, and Tama dazedly watched her mentor's fast-moving lips until, before she knew it, Ruler's explanation was over. Ruler looked at Tama in the eye and asked,
"Do you understand?"
"I'm sorry, I don't really."
"You stupid idiot! Moron! Listen up when people are talking to you!"
Ruler yelled, suddenly furious. Tears rose in Tama's eyes as she shrank even smaller. Once the thorough scolding was over, Ruler sighed. Well, it eats like you are common enough. That's why I've made this. She pulled out a booklet that looked rather like a guidebook for a school field trip. It was a stack of printouts stapled together with a drawing of Ruler, staff raised, on the cover. The design was very aesthetically pleasing, and the illustration was good enough to be mistaken for the work of a professional manga artist or illustrator. Above the illustration, the title was written in a large comical font. The Road to Being a Magical Girl? Read this, and you'll understand what we should be like. Well, all you really have to do is remember everything I say, but people with poor memories like yourself are common enough. And it's a ruler's role to lead the ignorant masses. Ruler began talking again, but Tama only pretended to listen as she opened the booklet. She was getting dizzy just looking at the lines and lines of tiny characters. What's wrong? I can't read most of these kanji characters. There are a lot of words I don't understand. You ignoramus, simpleton, fluff for brains? Ruler raged at her like a storm, and the temple around them groaned under her vicious, angry shouts. With a vein popping on her temple and her shoulders heaving after the harsh dressing down, Ruler took the booklet from Tama and opened it up. So, which kanji can't you read? Which words don't you know? Hurry up, out with it. Don't irritate me any more than I already am. This? This? The only sound in the quiet, abandoned temple was the scritch of Ruler's pencil moving. Shoulder to shoulder, the two of them faced the booklet. Tama would point out kanji, and Ruler would write a phonetic spelling. Once the final page was full, Ruler shoved the booklet at Tama. All right, no complaints? Oh yes, no complaints. Thank you very much. So then make sure to remember it all. Make absolutely sure. If you don't, I'll be angry. Tama looked at Ruler with upturned eyes. Her mentor looked incredibly confident and imposing as she crossed her arms and gave a little Ruler, ma'am? What? You're really kind. Shut up! There's no need for that! Ruler flushed red all the way to the tips of her ears. Huffing mad, she squared her shoulders and marched out. Her long cape slid over the floor and left a dust-free trail in her wake. Tama watched her go with a tilted head. Her impression of Ruler had gone from seemed scary to definitely scary, but she also suspected she was a slightly different brand of scary. Is she actually a good person? But she got the feeling she wasn't, that wasn't quite it either. Head still tilted, Tama hummed uncertainly, unable to put the idea into words. After that, Ruler summoned Tama to Okatsuji at every opportunity. Under Ruler's instructions, Tama performed tasks like cleaning up the whole temple and repairing the damaged areas. Tama wasn't the only one there at these times either. The twin angels were there with them too. This pair, Meadow and Unile, who'd been introduced as the Peaky Angels, obeyed Ruler without whining or complaints. For Tama's part, she thought of them as a set with Ruler. 2 days earlier, the Peaky Angels had asked to see Tama. The magic pencil or pen reminds you of the speed of a JoJo character. I'm going to DM you a gif of how fast they draw. Whoa. I was not ready for that. Wow.
We want to be popular. Popular! That's exactly what we're not, huh, sis?
They had arranged to meet on the roof of the train station building. As soon as Tama arrived, the twin angels began ranting at her. The pair said nothing but, and uh-huh, when Ruler was present, and Tama had never imagine what they would yell about anything. So she was surprised. The Peaky Angels chatted back and forth, not allowing Tama to get a word in edgewise.
So you know that one site, right? Like, it's full of nothing but articles about Snow White. It's nothing but stuff the magical girl in white did. What's up with that? Is there more than one of her or something? There's just so many sightings of her. We can't take this lying down. Only about 1/10 of the stuff is about us, even though there's 2 of us. It's weird, right? So there's this popularity poll coming up on the aggregate site. If we're gonna be magical girls and all, we want to be popular. Obviously, right? So we did a bunch of stuff to try to get popular. You're so magical, sis.
Meadow and Unile told Tama they'd come up with a plan to boost their popularity by sock puppeting. Meadow had used her own magical phone to create a thread about how she'd been saved by twin angels, while Unile had used her own magical phone to post a sympathizing response.
They saved me too. Those angels were so cute.
This ploy to use both their phones to stir up enthusiasm for the Peaky Angels fell apart because of one unforeseen complication. Though each of the twins had their own phone, identical IDs ended up displaying on the message boards.
We have 2 different phones. Why are our IDs the same? Are the 2 of us a set? When we complained about this to Fav, he wasn't bothered at all. He was just like, oh, really? Give us a break.
For their transparent ploy, the twins were laughed at, trolled, and driven off the message boards. Their next idea was to use their old normal phones to redo the scheme, but the whole brouhaha had burned that bridge for them. Anyone who brought up the twin angels would just be treated like a sock puppet. Meanwhile, the sightings of Snow White continued to increase.
So, like, at this rate, things are gonna get real bad, you know? Really bad. Snow White is gonna win by a landslide. It's not good. We thought about having a press conference. But apparently, if you reveal you're a magical girl, you have to quit. We also thought about just voting multiple times for ourselves. But if we get caught again, we'll probably get banned from the site. So do you have any good ideas, Tama? Do you? We're friends, right? You've got to have some good ideas, right?
The twin angels were pressing closer and closer, until Tama's back was touching the iron railing. Feeling the cold metal on her back, Tama thought, I really don't get what they want from me, but I do understand they're counting on me. When Tama had been a normal girl, not a single person had ever relied on her. Some might have made fun of her or gotten mad at her, but no one had ever wanted her help. At most, people had only ordered her to go buy juice for them or carry their backpack on the way home. Ever since she had become a magical girl, that had changed. People thanked her. People looked at her with gratitude. The awkwardness and embarrassment made her want to squirm, but she was happy, which felt nice. Helping people made Tama profoundly glad she had become a magical girl. Now she could understand, just a bit, why the ones on TV ran around doing so much stuff for others. And now there were 2 other magical girls relying on Tama. They thought of her as one of the group. One of them. Friends. Tama had shared a deep, loving bond with her grandmother, but she had been family. Tama had never had friends, or been part of something bigger. For the first time in her life, someone was calling her part of the group. And what's more, there were 2 of them who rely on her. Oh, good night, Noelle. Thank you. The angels were fluttering and rustling their wings, their expressions serious.
Could really work.
Oh, wait. Sorry. This is Tama.
You could work really hard at helping people? We're already working hard. Snow White is cheating somehow.
It seemed they didn't appreciate her answer. What about asking Ruler for advice?
No way. I don't want to have to deal with a hysterical old bag. She's so annoying. If we ever get the chance, we're gonna get her good. I'd love to see the look on her face. She'd probably look so offended. Totally mortified. She's awful. One day I just want to take her down a peg. Yeah, she's so full of herself.
The two effortlessly spouted off a stream of invective toward Ruler. Tama had assumed they did what Ruler said because they liked her, but it seemed that wasn't the case. Tama felt a little sad. If you ask her advice, I think she'll hear you out, though?
No way. Forget it.
Evidently, they didn't want to ask for Ruler's help, no matter what. Tama had a hunch that if she pushed that suggestion anymore, she'd become the target of their ire, so she shut her mouth. Whatever the two angels thought of Tama's silence, they pressed her for a response.
No ideas? No ideas?
They asked as they tugged on her sleeve and smushed her paws. Smooshed her paws. Tama was a middle schooler, and Meadow and Unile were the size of children. Tama was bigger, but since they had her outnumbered 2-1, the way they crowded her was pretty scary. Looking closely, Tama thought the two of them didn't even seem to be blinking, making them even more frightening. Feeling tears building up in the corners of her eyes, Tama looked away. So many things appeared tiny from atop the station building. People, and more people walking briskly down the street, a ginkgo tree swaying in the breeze. Cars going in and out of the parking lot at a pachinko parlor. The big digital boards in front of the station. On the screen, a famous idol Tama recognized was singing and dancing. Something crossed her mind. It was a flash of insight, possibly the first in her life. She yelled, "You could make a promotional video!" Okay, 1 second. I just want to refill my water. I'll be right back. Oh, wrong screen. Here we go. All right. The competition in the popularity poll was reaching its climax. There was the magical girl in white, who boasted an overwhelming number of sightings, and then there were the twin angels, whose popularity had suddenly shot through the roof when someone uploaded a video titled "Two Angels in Flight Holding Hands" to a streaming site. Support and votes from fans of both made it a fierce neck-and-neck contest that long remained a subject of discussion on the site. Support for the magical girl in white was both broad and deep-rooted, and in the end she reached first by a hair's breadth, while the twin angels earned a frustrating second. Oh, the peaky angels were sure to take it out on Tama. They would yell that they'd lost because of her strategy, believing deep in her heart that would be the case. Tama dragged her heavy feet out to the top of the station building where they were to meet. There she was greeted by the angels, who sounded surprisingly cheerful. The pair held out their hands. Meadow took Tama's right while Unile took her left, and they shook her hands vigorously.
Woohoo! Welcome, friend! We got second! Did you see on the site?
Oh yeah. They were giving so many compliments.
That big video plan really worked, huh?
Though they had called it a promotional video, it had just been a simple project filmed by Tama with a home video camera and edited by Meadow and Unile on their computer. With Tama forced to be a camera operator for the first time, the filming process had been full of failures, falling over, running out of batteries, and making mistakes with the camera. Without image stabilization, they would never have managed to put the video together in the first place. You think?
And Bob said that's technically breaking the rules, Poon. We got that, Bob. Good.
They seemed glad. Tama breathed a sigh of relief.
Okay, then let's play some celebratory moment. Momotetsu at our hideout now. Yeah, let's.
Huh?
We've got a hideout that give even Ruler a shock. First time she sees it. Yep.
Huh? Oh, I should share this picture. This story's almost over.
If I lose, I'll buy you dinner tomorrow. Woo! Huh?
Each of the angels grabbed one of Tama's arms and floated up in the air with her in tow. You'd think that flying so close together, their wings would beat against each other, but they spiraled up without any trouble. The crowd walking below shrank even smaller. The winds were strong up high, and Tama couldn't bear to open her eyes. It was terrifying, but also somehow fun.
Okay, then, a 10-year trial, right? No handicaps.
It seemed Tama had much yet to learn. Oh, I'm sorry, there is one violent story tonight. Or maybe I'm not sorry. Although, no one dies. I can tell you that much. Zombie Western. This story is set around when the survival game and magical girl raising project was reaching its climax. Magicaloid 44 was a difficult one to evaluate. In Calamity Mary's mind, an evaluation was basically just answering the question of whether someone was strong or weak. Calamity Mary's sense of Magicaloid 44 varied depending on the time. Sometimes she was stronger, sometimes she was weaker. For example, if Calamity Mary were to fight Vice Winter Prison, the hairs on the back of her neck would stand up the moment they were within 30 feet of each other, before Mary could even see her. But when dealing with Winter Prison's partner, Sister Nana, no matter how close Mary got, she never felt the urge to fight her. With Magicaloid 44, some days she was like Vice Winter Prison, and others she was more like Sister Nana. It was never clear whether she was strong or weak. But it was unquestionable that either way, Calamity Mary wouldn't let her guard down around the robot girl. Magicaloid 44 had a solid ability to judge where she should go and who she should rely on. The fact that she'd bet on Calamity Mary indicated as much. So now Calamity Mary was drinking alone. As for why she was unaccompanied, Magicaloid 44 had not returned, even though Mary had been without her for a long time. She kicked the fuzz of the carpet with her boot and flopped down onto the soft leather sofa as she looked up at the needlessly extravagant chandelier. When Magicaloid 44 had come requesting her protection, Calamity Mary had demanded that she kill one magical girl. It didn't matter who. She would have to do as much, she would have to do at least that much if she wanted to surrender to Calamity Mary. That was just a matter of course. She didn't need unprepared weaklings. Um, Calamity Mary rolled over and buried her face in the backrest of the sofa. Magicaloid 44 had a good head on her shoulders. She'd know what fate awaited her if she were to ignore Mary's demand and run. In other words, she wouldn't. Her good judgment also meant she wouldn't have gone after anyone who was too much for her to handle. She must have planned to kill someone low risk. Swim Swim's clique had numbers. Sister Nana had winter prison with her. Ripple and Topspeed were practically joined at the hip. Musician of the Forest Cranberry was operating solo, but she was strong. Of course, Calamity Mary wouldn't let her win, but a fight against Cranberry would be a struggle even for her. So the only possible targets left were the newbie magical girl and Snow White. And Snow White, having just lost her partner, La Pucelle, would be a better target than an unknown quantity like the newbie. All Snow White had was a lot of candy, and she wasn't a great fighter. She had no guts either. She would be the perfect target. Before giving Magicaloid 44 the order to go kill someone, Calamity Mary had told her indirectly that if she did, it should be Snow White. Despite her considerable demand, she'd been quite thoughtful in her own way. That was the least she could do as the more experienced magical girl. There might be a death, actually. I said there wasn't, but I didn't know we were recapping this scene. One or two Snow Whites wouldn't be a problem for Magicaloid 44, or shouldn't have been. But for some reason, Magicaloid 44 still had to get in touch with Calamity Mary. 2 days earlier, the robot girl had left this room, and now she wasn't just failing to make contact. Mary couldn't reach Magicaloid 44 from her end either. Mary texted and called, but got no reply.
Something happened?
Calamity Mary rolled over on the sofa, sat up from her reclined position, and turned on her magical phone to summon Fav.
Yes, what is it, Poon?
Tell me where Magicaloid 44 is right now and what she's up to.
Oh, it's not really a question of what she's doing right now.
If someone killed her, tell me who.
Calamity Mary put her magical phone on the side table and leaned in close to the black and white hologram.
Killing someone in my employ means they underestimate Calamity Mary. It'd ruin my reputation if I let this slide.
But wouldn't it be a little unfair for Fav to tell you, Poon?
Fair, unfair, that's rich coming from you. I can tell you don't give a damn. If you tell me, I'm sure things will go the way you want them to. I'll guarantee it.
Only 3 weeks earlier, the announcement had come from management that the 16 magical girls born through the mobile game Magical Girl Raising Project would be reduced to 8. Every week, someone would be cut based on how much candy she held, and the magical girls at the bottom would die, without exception. Already, 3 had been cut. Calamity Mary had also heard that one group had ganged up on some other magical girls in order to steal their candy. And then there was the announcement of new items for download. Tools for killing one another presented under the pretext of useful items. Everything about the situation was steering them toward a kill or be killed bloodbath. Middle schooler Ako Harota had been suicidal when the magical girl in white had saved her. And that had been the trigger for Akko to become Hardcore Alice. Suffering under her father's sin, Akko had agonized over her own helplessness, tormented with the belief that death was her only option. Her savior then had been a magical girl, which she had thought only existed in anime and manga. Her savior had dirtied her pretty, pure white outfit to find the house key Akko had dropped earlier. Oh, hello, Pookie! I was just wondering when you were going to show up. If we were going to start Sonic in about an hour. We've been meaning to say that Dada was going to be the one to join tonight. I want to be the one to start Sad AM though. Her savior had dirtied her pretty, pure white outfit to find the house key Akko had dropped earlier. The girl had given her such a happy smile that it gave joy to the ones who saw it too. Oh, cool. Once Akko found out that magical girls were real, she spent some of her savings on a smartphone. She begged her aunt and uncle to pay for a monthly contract so she could start playing the mobile game Magical Girl Raising Project, which rumors said could make players real magical girls. Akko's goal was to gain those powers, nothing else. If she couldn't do it, she would die. Not only because she was determined, she meant die to begin with. She would only be resuming her original plan in that case. Akko literally devoted her life to this goal, sacrificing the time needed for other things, beginning with sleep, to tackle Magical Girl Raising Project. She didn't just play the game to the point of collapse. She kept playing even after she collapsed. What? And as a result became a magical girl through sheer obsession. She was a magical girl in black, the opposite of Snow White. Next to each other, they would surely strike a beautiful contrast. Everyone would be talking about the white and black magical girl duo. Akko, transformed into Hardcore Alice, would help people together with Snow White. This was her dream. Hardcore Alice's magic was quick healing. As an experiment, she pierced her palm with a needle, cut it with a chisel, burned it with a lighter, and more, self-injuring over and over. But any wound would heal up in a flash until it looked just as it had before. With this magic, she could protect Snow White from any nasty magical girls. And Hardcore Alice had, in fact, succeeded in protecting Snow White just the other night. A robot had cut off her head without so much as a word, but before she could go for Snow White, too, Alice had destroyed it. When Alice had stabbed through the robot's chest with a spear hand, the robot had transformed into a woman and fallen face down in a puddle of blood. That was all Alice needed to know. The robot had been a magical girl. Alice had also understood that she had killed a person. She had felt no despair at arriving in the same position as her father. She trembled with a sense of accomplishment at successfully protecting Snow White. Alice had pressed the rabbit's foot, an item that cost her years of her life, into Snow White's hand and left. Afterward, even when she was home, even the morning of the next day when she went to school, she was still elated. Alice's magic was more powerful than she had imagined. It wasn't just that her wounds would heal quickly. Even if her head was cut off, she wouldn't die. She could walk around with no head and could even quickly regenerate it. This wasn't like a lizard dropping its tail. Not even a protozoon could regenerate like this. This was real magic. With this power, Hardcore Alice could protect Snow White. She could repay her. The previous night, they had parted ways without resolution. Snow White had vanished before Hardcore Alice could even notice she was gone. Alice figured she would greet Snow White properly that day for sure. She would take her hero's hand as an equal to tell her, "Let's work hard together." Night fell. Um, or was Snow White supposed to be saying that line? No, I think that was Alice. Night fell. Akko transformed into Hardcore Alice, and she rushed over to Kubekahama. Another bad magical girl could come after Snow White, just like the other day. Akko jumped on the back of a small blue truck parked on the shoulder of the road and bounded to a white truck stomped on the opposite shoulder of the 4-lane highway, then over onto the roof of someone's house. There was a whiff of salt in the wind. About 1 in every 200 roofs in this area belonged to a tackle shop. The ocean was nearby. She was in Kubekahama, and Snow White was here. Sister Nana had taught Hardcore Alice that a magical girl's hideout should be away from populated areas. So Snow White would be somewhere people didn't go. It would be an abandoned warehouse, the top of a fishing co-op building, somewhere like that. Perhaps it would be in a deserted alley or under power lines. And no matter where Snow White was, if Hardcore Alice wanted to find her, it would be best to search from on high. Magical girls had exceptional vision and could see well in the dark. Kubekahama was Akko's home, so she didn't need research to know the location of the highest spot in town. There was a particularly large iron tower on a hill near the swimming beach. The top of that was best. Hardcore Alice headed for the iron tower, checking the top of the fishing co-op, back alleys, and other places along the way that seemed likely to hide a magical girl. Running atop the chain link fence around the elementary school grounds, she jumped to the top of a streetlight, then leaped again to grab a hold of the wall of the school building and clamber onto the roof. She could see the iron tower on top of the hill just ahead. Right when Hardcore Alice was about to jump down, her stomach burst open in an explosion of blood and guts. The Yishmash Saiga 12 is a shotgun manufactured in a certain Chile nation. As a member of the AK family, it's unsurprisingly cheap and also offers great durability. This semi-automatic carries more cartridges than the weapons they call shotguns in Japan. Powered with Calamity Mary's magic, it could turn even a magical girl's body into a little more than a crushed tomato. Calamity Mary did not forgive insults. Killing Magicaloid 44, who had been operating under her command, was a clear insult. She had to lay down the law, or the others would all treat her with contempt. And if she became the target of contempt, it was over. Pav had told Calamity Mary that this magical girl, this Alice in Wonderland wearing pitch black, was named Hardcore Alice. Calamity Mary didn't know where the girl was rushing off to, but her sprinting without looking back had allowed Calamity Mary to get close and nail her with a point-blank spray of shots. Hardcore Alice had not been cautious enough. Mary didn't know what sort of magic Alice had, but it didn't seem like much. If it had been enough to kill Magicaloid 44, then the loser must not have been that good. Calamity Mary pushed the body away with a kick to the ass and looked up at the sky. She felt like the stars were prettier here than in the Jonan district. It never got dark there the way it should at night. As the starry sky entranced her for once, what brought her back to reality was a sensation of floating. Her floating didn't feel solid. The ground was above her. Had gravity been inverted? No. Something was tightly holding onto her ankle. Before Calamity Mary even had the time to think, she was slammed into the concrete. She just barely managed to break her fall, but her bones creaked with a severe impact. As fragments of concrete scattered around her, she tried to see who her opponent was, but her body was twisted around. The grip on her ankle held firm. This time, she was swung around horizontally and then flung into the air. This was the school roof. If Calamity Mary didn't do something, being launched into the air meant falling all the way to the ground. From the special item hanging from her belt, a 4-dimensional bag. She pulled a rope and tossed out one end of it. Given her cowgirl theme, she had of course mastered lassoing. She hooked the loop of the lasso around the iron fence and yanked hard. The fence bent nearly to the point of breaking, but Calamity Mary swung back onto the roof with the help of her rope. The spray of shots had hit Hardcore Alice all over, and now that Mary was actually facing her, she could clearly see the girl's abdomen was blasted open. But even eviscerated as she was still moving. Mary dodged a punch and blocked a kick. Alice was fast, and she was strong. In terms of pure physical strength, she outmatched Calamity Mary. She could well be tied with Vice Winter Prison to rank as the strongest among the local magical girls. And her endurance surpassed even Winter Prison's. Even with her internal organs surrounding her, she moved with energy. Calamity Mary fainted a third time without asking, then a fourth, falling back onto the ground instead. Pointing her gun upward, she aimed for her enemy's head and pulled the trigger. The dark Alice's skull and brain burst open, and she fell backward. With a sigh, Calamity Mary rose to her feet, and then immediately her breath caught again. The moment Mary stood, Hardcore Alice, headless, stood up as well and charged her. This wasn't just about simple endurance anymore. Mary leaped backward to dodge Alice's rising attack. Alice's face was in smithereens, which obviously should have prevented her from seeing, but it didn't seem to bother her. She kicked, punched, threw slabs of concrete, and ripped the twisted iron fence off the roof to sweep it around at her enemy. Calamity Mary crouched immediately, but she failed to dodge entirely, and it sent her 10-gallon hat flying through the air. She fired the Saiga 12 from her hip, aiming for Alice's ankles to stop her from running around. Then again. Facing her fallen opponent, Mary fired and fired until her clip was empty, transforming Alice from a crushed tomato into meat sauce. With her enemy finally incapacitated, Calamity Mary felt relieved, and as soon as she realized that fact, she was irritated. She was about to give Hardcore Alice one last kick when she noticed something. The corpse in front of her was moving. It wasn't the spasms of the dying. It was struggling with intent to move.
You piece of shit!
Mary drew her Tokarev and fired until it was empty, and then emptied the clip of her AK too. The roof of the elementary school was flooding with blood. And then, right as Mary was thinking,
"She's gotta be dead now!"
the thing that should have been a corpse twitched. Despite having been destroyed to the point of unrecognizability, it was still alive. Calamity Mary pulled out multiple hand grenades, pulled the pins, and tossed them all over the roof as she jumped down to the ground. After exactly 3 seconds, there was a large explosion. Those had been more than mere hand grenades. They were super weapons, powered by Calamity Mary's magic. Watching the wreckage of the roof fall down, Mary was certain that this must have killed Alice. Running up to the roof again, she found the explosion had not only blasted the roof, even the classrooms on the floor below had been blown open, and in the center of one of those rooms was a squirming lump of meat. A vein popped out on Calamity Mary's temple. Drawing her army knife, she sliced the meat into 10 parts and scattered them. 9 of the pieces stopped moving, but the largest part continued writhing. Its wounds healed so fast, she could see it happening. It was trying to reform its human body. Calamity Mary pulled out a bottle, cautiously opened the lid, and poured the contents over the meat. This was concentrated sulfuric acid imbued with Mary's magic. It would do worse than burn and inflame the skin. Smoldering white smoke rose from the flesh, and an awful smell, the kind that would hit your stomach directly, wafted up and dispersed in the wind. The acid opened a hole in the floor of the classroom, but this lump of meat was still moving. Mary pulled out a second, and then a third bottle of the acid. She would erase this thing and make sure not even dust was left. The acid burned all the way from the third floor to the first, and Calamity Mary followed it down, pouring on more and more. The meat melted, the lump disappeared, and Mary pumped her fist in victory. She was wiping the sweat off her forehead, thinking she could feel relieved and go, when she realized the meat was reforming within the sea of sulfuric acid. It was moving. She felt dizzy.
Gotta be mistaken.
Even when she rubbed her eyes, the lump of meat wouldn't go away. Meow. Calamity Mary pulled a jug of gasoline from her hand, poured it out, struck a match, and threw it in. The fire flared up with near explosive strength, but even burned to cinders, the lump of meat still writhed. Calamity Mary stomped on it again and again, but yes, it was still moving. She gave a thin smile. She'd never been so humiliated in her whole career as a magical girl. She pulled an oil drum out of her bag. As long as she could carry it, anything would fit in her four-dimensional bag, even a big oil drum or liquid concrete. Mary stuffed the meat into the oil drum and then poured liquid concrete out from her bag on top of it. She filled the drum, then stuffed it into her bag. Calamity Mary could hear sirens wailing outside. She had to get away, now. She was headed to the harbor. She would sink the drum to the bottom of the ocean and end her work for the day. Then it would be done. Then it would be over. Done. Finished. A few days later, when the dropouts were announced in the chat, all Fav said was,
This week's cup was Magical 844.
no other names were called. Calamity Mary laughed. Alone in a club VIP room, she cackled until her shoulders shook. A dark feeling was settling on the bottom of her soul. She had to blow it all away. For that, she needed a party, not just a kill. This demanded an extravagant, bombastic, blood-splattering, flesh-scattering tragedy. The thought of Ripple ran through her mind, but she alone wasn't enough. Calamity Mary needed more sacrifices to quiet her heart. Winter Prison was relieved. They had found 2 other magical girls who sympathized with Sister Nana. Calamity Mary wasn't worth talking to. Cranberry had attacked them out of the blue. Ripple was uncooperative, and Top Speed didn't want to rock the boat. All of their other encounters so far had wounded Sister Nana's heart. Now, finally, they may have gotten a start, at least. Snow White and Sister Nana were shaking hands, both looking excited as they agreed to work together. Behind them, Hardcore Alice was observing them intently. Winter Prison brought her willowy eyebrows together just slightly and sniffed. She smelled salt. She looked toward Hardcore Alice and their eyes met. The smell of the sea was wafting around her.
Did something happen?
Asked Winter Prison.
No, not really.
Hardcore Alice broke eye contact with her and looked over at Snow White and Sister Nana again. If Alice herself said it was nothing, then it had to be nothing. Winter Prison gave a small nod. Graby scrolled way up in the chat. Oh, Scooper, I didn't know he was down here. This is our last story for the night. Magical Daisy, episode 22. This story is set quite a while before Magical Girl Racing Project restart. So this is the beginning of a episode script. So I guess I'll read the names. Or maybe I won't, because I guess we don't read the names in the chat logs.
What's wrong, Daisy? You're sighing.
Of course I am. I'm sad because I have to spend my weekend digging a hole.
Your mom asked you to dig a hole for some garbage, right?
Why can't I just make one with my beam? It'd be faster.
You can't use your magic for something like that. Just use a shovel like normal.
You just want to make things harder for me, Pellet.
Listen, big news. Sai found a treasure map in her closet. Huh? Really? Really. We're all gonna go look for the treasure. You should come with us, Daisy. For sure, I'm coming right now.
Hold on, Daisy, you're not done digging that hole.
Miracle, logical, cynical, magical Daisy. She's a fighting princess from the flower country. Ripping through the wind with her daisy punch, whoosh, smashing rocks with her daisy kick, whack. And her ultimate move is Daisy Beam! Ba-boom! Come on, everyone's waiting, let's go, right now! Halfway through the opening theme, she turned off the TV. With a touch of a button, the vividly colored animation on screen went black. For Kiku Yakumo, watching the Magical Daisy TV broadcast was almost ceremonial, and she never missed it. This was partly because she took a serious and formal approach to watching the show, with gratitude and pride in her heart. However, because the third-year student in middle school openly watching a Sunday morning anime every week without missing an episode would be seen as childish, she was discreet about this secret ceremony. But that day, there was a reason she had to skip the viewing for once.
Are you ready?
Asked Paulette, the small, weaselly, mouse-like animal that was her mascot character, poking out of her pouch bag. I'm ready. Kiku nodded. It had been 1 year since Kiku Yakumo had turned from just another kid in middle school into the heroine Magical Daisy. She'd accomplished a lot as Daisy, and not just safe little good deeds like de-transforming to take a lost child's hand and bring them back to their parents. She had done dangerous things too, like grabbing a truck and waking the driver when he was asleep at the wheel and his vehicle rolled backward. And along with these activities, she'd also lived a normal life as a middle school student. Kiku had planned plenty of friends, and others would come seeking her advice. Resolving those issues for them was also a part of her role as a magical girl. Some pubescent worries had no solutions, but just being a listening ear did wonders. Every day was hectic for Kiku, filled with work that was busy, fun, and worthwhile. Magical Daisy's determination to overcome her difficulties, maintain her training, become stronger, become kinder, and be an even better magical girl had caught the attention of an auditor who had come secretly to observe her. This was reported to the higher-ups, and now an anime had been made about her. It reproduced Magical Daisy's exploits fairly faithfully, aside from some dramatized aspects, like the premise that she was an exchange student from the world of flowers. Palette, the mascot character who was always with Daisy, told her that the number of magical girls who got anime based on them were just one bit of a handful who were filtered and melted down and refined and polished by the hand of an artisan into ultra-rare legends. Daisy got lost halfway through that spiel, but she could tell from Palette's proud expression that it was very unusual and a high honor. Listening to Palette explain, she felt she was truly fortunate to be commended with an anime based off her life, when she hadn't even been a magical girl for very long. Each and every day, as she used her powers to make people's lives better, she never forgot to be grateful.
Are you nervous, Daisy?
Yeah, well, a bit. She was more confident than others her age, and she was aware of her own gutsiness, even when she wasn't transformed. All her efforts as a magical girl had changed not only Magical Daisy, but Kiku Yakumo on the inside. Experience had turned into confidence, and confidence to a firm, strong core of strength. And now Kiku was nervous enough to write out the kanji character for person on her palm with her other finger, the standard little trick to calm down. A different magical girl challenge than the sort she'd experienced so far awaited her. She changed into her school uniform and called, "See you later!" as she went out the front door. As for why she was in her uniform, she didn't know what to wear when meeting someone important, so the safest thing was her school uniform. pushing her arms through the sleeves of her traditional sailor outfit in old-fashioned design that was unpopular with students. She'd had a staring contest with a mirror while she arranged her scarf. Yes, she would be meeting someone important that day. She'd been told they were coming from the magical kingdom to make sure she was doing proper work as a magical girl. This was supposed to be different from an adult. It was more like she was meeting a producer or director. Due to the nature of the work and the fact that they couldn't allow themselves to be seen by ordinary people, magical girls generally worked at night. That day, however, she'd been on the job first thing in the morning, but still, she couldn't transform now. So as Kiku Yakumo, wearing her uniform, she headed out to the spot where she'd be meeting this important someone. It was a 5-minute walk to the station, where she got on the train moving away from the city center, riding it to a commercial area 2 stops away. The important person would be waiting at the hotel by the station. Kiku had written the name of the hotel, the room number, and the name the person was using in the human's world on a piece of paper. Unable to keep calm on the train, she pulled the memo out of her pocket repeatedly to check what it said. Just meeting a VIP in the magical world was enough to make her uneasy on its own, and it was especially anxiety-inducing when she didn't know what this person was like. Hellett had never met this person either.
I've always been on the front lines as a mascot, so I don't know anyone that's important.
That just means you get worked like a dog because you're at the bottom of the ladder, doesn't it?
Most people would be uncomfortable saying that, but it's merely second nature for you, huh, Daisy?
By the time Kiku arrived at the front desk of the hotel, the pounding of her heart was so loud she could hear it. Even she could hear it. To her, this humble busyness hotel by the station seemed like a distinguished lodging with a history of serving royalty and titled nobility. Kiku told the name and room number to the front desk so she could be let in, and then went up to the room and gulped. She knocked twice. Come in. A woman's voice. No, a girl's? So, a magical girl? Pardon me. Kiku's hand on the doorknob was damp with sweat. She'd stiffened automatically, so she did her best to relax her voice and face before she opened the door. Her eyes scanned the room. It was small. On the right-hand side were the bathroom and toilet, and directly ahead was the bed. The sheets and blanket were in disarray, and a motley collection of small articles was scattered on top. As a whole, it was a mess. The figure sitting on the chair in front of the TV turned to Kiku, extending her right arm. Come on, sit down. Where? There was only one chair in the room, and it was occupied. A mess covered the bed, and there was nowhere for Kiku to step either. Of course, neither was there any place for her to sit. She looked back at the other girl. She must have been in her mid-teens. A VIP with that apparent age had to be a magical girl. Her attire was startlingly bizarre, the sort only a magical girl would wear. Her hair was green, styled as poofy curls mixed with dreadlocks. She wore a baseball hat to hold it all down, and big sunglasses too. But even with her eyes concealed, Daisy could tell her features were beautiful. That meant she had to be a magical girl. The long legs beneath her leopard print miniskirt were crossed, her arms folded, and her lips tightly pursed. Together with her tone, her body language seemed to indicate she was in a bad mood. Kiku panicked. Displeasing a VIP was really not good. There was no time for hesitation. The only place Kiku could sit was the floor, so she knelt there and looked up at the girl in front of her. The girl nodded and muttered, "Good." She was awfully arrogant for someone of her apparent age, so she had to be important after all. You don't have to be so formal. I just came here today to make sure the magical Daisy anime was being done properly. Oh, all right. You'd think the phrase, "you don't have to be so formal," on its own would sound kind enough, but the girl still seemed grumpy. Pellet nosed its way out of Daisy's pouch bag.
Nice to meet you. My name is Paulette, and I've been serving as Daisy's mascot character.
So while I waited, I checked all over the broadcast so far. She tossed a stack of papers onto the desk. Kiku's eyes flicked across the pages. It looked like a script for Magical Daisy, last week's broadcast. What was that? There was a drug deal going on in a warehouse in the city, said Kiku. And why are you exposing a drug deal? It's not what a magical girl should be doing, is it? Tell the police about it. That's what our tax dollars are for. You fired your beam too, didn't you? You're not supposed to use your killer move on humans. Kiku faltered, so Pellet took over.
We did beat them up the normal way. It's just putting their fighting as is into the anime would be bland, artistically speaking, so they dramatized it some and added in a beam. Ultimately, it was just for drama.
Pellet had recorded Magical Daisy's activities on video, then handed that over to an ally at the TV station. From there, it was passed along to the production company that made the anime. Pellet was the one making decisions about which part of the video to keep and which to discard, it explained. And the production company also relied on its opinion on how to best dramatize the story. The VIP's lips curled in an angry pout. Lies. Huh? Don't give me that. It's lies. You're putting stuff you didn't actually do into the anime. That's a betrayal of the children who believe Magical Daisy is real. But... You have no understanding at all of what magical girls are. Magical girls need to have kindness, charm, consideration, friendship, earnestness, and all sorts of things. Who wants a fight with a drug cartel? Nobody wants to see that first thing on a Sunday morning. The VIP smacked her stack of papers on the little desk, making Paulette duck its head back into the pouch while Kiku cringed. She wished she could just crawl into a hole and disappear. The VIP blew out a sigh and continued. And besides, there was something funny about the story of how you came to find out about this drug deal. You heard some local rumors from a classmate? Isn't the coincidence a little too convenient? Paulette, who had ducked away, timidly pushed its head out again.
About that, the station helped us out. When Daisy's classmate was walking through the shopping district on our way home, they made sure to talk about those rumors loud enough for her to hear.
It was faked. The girl smacked the table again, and Paulette once again hid. I was shocked. When I reviewed all of the episodes so far, they were all like this. Do you have no code of ethics or anything? You think you can get away with this? This? You could easily have your qualifications stripped, you know. Do you get it? An anime is far more important than you think. It's one of the few opportunities we have to show people what magical girls are. We can't allow these opportunities to be squandered. I'm sorry. It's not me you need to apologize to, is it? You need to apologize to all the people who've gotten the wrong impression about us. Isn't that right? I'm sorry. To all the viewers. Still on her knees, Kiku stared hard at the VIP's toes. She hadn't been told that they'd been having a discussion like this. Kiku could have sworn Paulette had told her this meeting was ultimately just a social nicety, so she had walked in with that in mind. And now Paulette was hiding inside her pouch bag and wouldn't come out. How long is this going to go on? She wondered as she hung her head. I understand you feel remorse, so you have to do something concrete about it. Yes, ma'am. We're going out now. Transform. Huh? But it's the middle of the day. So? I thought magical girls were supposed to avoid being seen. The VIP smacked the stack of papers 3 times. Why do you think I'm dressed like this? I'm hiding my appearance with this crazy getup so people can't tell I'm a magical girl. It's just like a masked wrestler wearing the mask wherever he goes. When a magical girl's out, she's always a magical girl. So change into this. The girl handed Kiku a paper bag. Inside were a dress shirt, a baseball cap, and a pair of overalls. Put those on. We're going to head out now to do some magical work. I'll do the recording. Things have gotten all messed up because you leave the stuff to your mascot. But don't butt me. Just do it. Now. Kiku put on the dress shirt and overalls and pulled the hat low over her eyes. Once she had wrapped a white towel around her face, nobody would think she was Magical Daisy. They'd probably take her for some weirdo or robber. 70% of the people she passed by gave her startled looks, doing double and triple takes, which seemed to support the hypothesis. Another 20% would get flustered and look away, only to find the shocking sight of someone with poofy green hair walking beside her, while the final 10% looked for a TV camera. At the end of their outing down the street, which had felt like pure humiliation to Kiku, they reached a deserted house. Even though this house was in the middle of town, it was clearly empty and dilapidated. It wasn't just old. It must have been someone's home once, but there was no sign of anyone there now. It was tilting, sooty, and overrun with weeds, and a part of the corrugated roof had come off. The VIP held a camcorder in her right hand as she stepped over a chain with a no trespassing sign hanging from it and unlocked the front door. The air inside was stale and dusty. Now we're going to clean this up. Make sure to give it your all. 10 minutes later. Bring those over here, Daisy, and put them all together in this cardboard box. Oh, okay. Hey, Paulette, when is this going to be over?
I don't know.
Come on. If you have time to babble, you have time to work. 30 minutes later. This tatami is rotting. Then put it over with the other trash. The floor underneath the tatami is rotting too. Pull out the baseboards. We'll repair it. 1 hour later. Yes, that's how you hammer the nails. Finally, you get it, Daisy. Thank you very much. 2 hours later. We're out of nails, so run down to the hardware store to buy some. I'll give you the money. Okay. I'll get some garbage bags while I'm at it, too. 5 hours later. Daisy, beam! Good. Now all the garbage is gone. The rice and pork miso soup is done. I'm surprised you can cook when you're so tiny. Oh.
The rice and pork miso soup is done.
I'm surprised you can cook when you're so tiny, Paulette.
It's just a matter of experience.
Working all the way through till morning, the 3 of them restored the dilapidated building. Well, not quite. But they made the place livable. The old lady who owned it was extremely grateful, squeezing Daisy's hand and saying, Thank you! Which made her feel rather glad, too. Karin Sonata, a 21-year-old newbie manga artist, tilted her head. She watched Magical Daisy every single week, and this episode was just weird. Magical Daisy hadn't used her magic at all. She'd just done a normal cleanup and repair of an old rundown house. The episode the week before, for example, had started off with Daisy digging a hole and then going on a treasure hunt. It was common in anime in general, not just in Magical Daisy, for an adventure to start with casual, mundane events. When the episode had begun, Karin had expected things to go in that direction, but the show had ended with nothing more than repairs and cleaning up. The old woman who owned the rundown old house had thanked Daisy. They'd all smiled together, and Paulette had ended the show with,
If you repair old things, you can still use them.
Like some educational program you'd be forced to watch in ethics class. Fade to black, no punchline. What's more, Daisy hadn't been wearing her usual costume, but a normal long sleeve shirt and denim overalls, her face covered with a cloth and baseball cap on her head. She looked like a chainsaw wielding murderer from some rural American town. That's no magical girl, Karian thought. Despite being an early morning show, Magical Daisy had an avant garde appeal. There were no evil overlords or sinister secret organizations. Rather, she had serious conflicts with real world criminal organizations. That was the reason Karian enjoyed watching the show, and that was also the reason for its popularity with the general public. That week's episode had completely missed the whole appeal of Magical Daisy. What had caused this to happen? When Karian went into the General Magical Girl website to check the Magical Daisy reaction thread on the message boards there, she found that the fan rage had reached an unprecedented level. Unlike other anime running that season, the Magical Daisy thread tended to be gentle and calm, a comfortable place to spend your time. But this combined with the influx of trolling surging in from somewhere or other to create a gruesome spectacle that would make you shield your eyes. Karian lumbered across the room, pulled a bag of potato chips from the cupboard, and opened it. Her diet had only lasted until the previous evening, and she had already lost all desire to commit. Relieving the stress of this blunder with Magical Daisy was the priority here. Karian's assistants would show up in the afternoon. Her deadline was close. A manga artist who had yet to secure her position had to work harder than a successful one, or else she would lose her footing. But first, she had to release this building stress. With a storm of crunching chips, she hit the keyboard. There was a mountain of things Karian had to say about this week's episode, as a magical girl enthusiast, and as a fan of Magical Daisy. The comments welled out of her in an endless stream. Even as she let her objections be known, as the long-standing user, Genopsycho, she was obligated to protect the peace of this message board. She was charged with many duties. She had to get to work defending Magical Daisy. Yeah, maybe I'll start a petition. Meow. She looked through the window up at the sky, where a white vapor trail was running across the great wall of blue. It was the sort of magnificent color that would make a beautiful painting as is. If she hadn't been so frustrated as she looked up at the azure canvas, it surely would have been a pleasant view, even if it was from the inside of a messy hotel room. I'm not wrong at all, she thought, and the feeling was building inside of her. She took off her baseball cap and tossed it onto the bed. Taking off the poofy wig, she put on her glasses and white coat, hung her Rubik's Cube from her neck. Oh, wait. I thought that was Daisy. I'm not wrong at all. Okay. She put the glasses and white coat, hung her Rubik's Cube from her neck. We've been doing the wrong voice all this time then. Oh well. And we read this story before, we just forgot who that character was. And pulled on her shorts. She had been fired. She loved Magical Girl anime. And that was exactly why she was so passionate about it. They hadn't understood her passion. She had worked so hard to assist in the production of that episode because she wanted people to know about the right kind of magical girl. But reviews had trashed it, and the Magical Kingdom had ordered her to return immediately. But the real Magical Daisy had only just begun. She was supposed to work the anime avenue to reveal what magical girls should really be doing. But the masses hadn't accepted the anime designed under her guidance. Protests and complaints had flooded in, and the TV stations had panicked and returned to the old crime-focused Magical Daisy. The masses were ignorant. This was populism, pandering and gratification. The girl tried to open a hotel window, but it wouldn't budge. It was made not to open, for safety's sake. A fixed window.
I hate magical girl anime.
The girl, Keek, yelled at the window that wouldn't open, and the glass shuddered. And that is the end of our reading for tonight. Next time, we will look forward to reading the next 5 mini-stories, which are called A Churn of Christmas, Wonder Dream, Meow Meow at End City, Come Play with Top Speed, and Akane and the Happy Magical Girl Family. Oh, that pause of the music was so well timed. That was it. Yes. Well, not of the entire book. I read a third of the book when I read through the books. But that's it for my stream, if that's what you meant. My next stream will be not this coming week, but the week after. I'm going to see if I can do one of those daytime slots. So I think I would enjoy streaming earlier in the day. And I will be playing more Pokemon Violet. And our schedule for this coming week. Tomorrow night at 11 p.m. EST. Hollow is continuing Hollow Knight. Tuesday at 2 p.m. EST. Magma is probably going to finish Madness Project Nexus. Wednesday night at 11 p.m. EST. Q is going to be playing more Splatoon 2 Octo Expansion. Thursday at 2 p.m. EST. Pookie is returning as a guest headmate streamer for SpongeBob Globs of Doom. It should work this time. Z attempted to stream that game a while back and it wouldn't work at a certain point. But we tried the Wii version and it seems to work just fine. And this will also be the first time we will be using a live 2D model that we made. It's so exciting. We love the way it looks and behaves. Like the movements of the model are very fun. It's exciting to get to show that off. And then Sunday at 11 p.m. EST, Cuddle will be playing more Heart Chain Kitty. I think I'll raid Corteo, who just, I think, started streaming. Oh, hello, Colorful Cast! I'm wrapping up the stream. Yeah. Our goal is to, usually we would stream 4 hours, but on Sundays we stream 3 hours for Sonic. Yeah, I understood what you say. I thought when you said I already ended that I ended what I was streaming. Yes, thank you for reminding me to say that. In a few minutes, on Fukuma's channel, Data will be joining for the final 6 episodes of Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. And next week, I believe we are starting Sonic Satya, which is probably my personal favorite. I'm biased because I think I'm a Sallykin and I should probably add her to my list, but I can never remember. Yes, I'm going to raid Corteo, who is playing Pokemon Infinite Fusion. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day or night, wherever you're at. We look forward to seeing you next time. Take care of yourself. Bye bye.